The city of Porto in Portugal is coming to the Upland Metaverse in the next couple of days, and with it is the first European city in Upland and a whole lot of opportunity for some fantastic property minting. Before I get started, I'd like to thank my executive channel members, Bad Frog, Matrigno, Monopoly Mike, JDad303 and Matsuda R. Thank you very much for your ongoing support. If you're watching this video and you'd like access to some super cool perks like a private chat room, priority responses to messages on YouTube or Discord, monthly one-on-one chats with me to talk about Upland strategy or anything you'd like, click the join button under the video. It really supports the channel. It's already helped me upgrade the quality with this new microphone. So thank you very much if you do decide to become a channel member, and thank you for the existing ones for your continued support of the channel. On with the collection predictions, and I'm going to make a bold statement that I've never made before in an Upland City release. I'm going to start by saying that in terms of collections, it doesn't matter. That's right. Porto is a city that is so small, and it's the first European city. There's going to be a lot of hype around it, and there's only 35,000 properties in the whole thing. If you look at Rio, the original release, plus the expansion, those sold out pretty much immediately, and that is 70,000 properties. This is going to be half that amount, and there's no expansions. This is the whole city. So my number one tip for minting in Porto is whatever you happen to be floating over, whether it's something high demand and full of collection speculation, or just some random property that you happen to be over when the city unlocks for minting, just grab it. If you're minting in Porto, I think you're going to be happy. I think that if you do try to send to an area where there's a higher chance of it being a collection, I think it's going to be all gone by the time you send. I genuinely think that all of Porto is going to mint out in about 30 minutes. That's a bold statement. I've never said it before, but that's the kind of vibe that I'm getting. A lot of people, I think, are holding on to more liquidity than most other players think. The sales have been kind of slow after the Rio announcement, and a lot of people have been interpreting that as people have already spent all their UPIX in Rio. But no, I think they're getting ready for Porto. I think this is the hype city that a lot of people want to get in on, because a lot of the experienced players, they've seen what happened in Rutherford, which was a tiny, tiny city, and the floor price there just exploded. I think the floor price there is about 450% markup, so that's 4.5 times what the person paid for it at like the minimum. Porto is a lot bigger than Rutherford. Rutherford's about 7,000 properties, so it might not be a 4.5 times mint floor price, but I can absolutely see some people making this their new treasure hunt home, and they'd be very interested in buying properties all over Porto to try and make that treasure hunting map to make that process a lot easier. So full disclosure, that's what I'm going to be doing in Porto. If I happen to be floating over something good, then fantastic. If I'm floating over something that's not so good, I'm going to mint it anyway. But if you are going to take that gamble and try to send your explorer to a certain area, or you want to know, if your explorer's floating over a certain area, which bits to prioritize, or if you want to speculate on the second-hand collection market after the city releases, then I do have some neighborhoods and streets and other tips for you with my ideas as to what's going to be valuable and what could be a collection. As always, I want to give the disclaimer, I'm not always right. I often am, but there are no guarantees in Upland. I know as much about the collections as you guys do, and these are just my informed opinions based on previous releases and what I've noticed Uplands tend to like to prioritize in terms of their collection reveals. So I'm going to start by talking about neighborhoods, and to be honest, it's pretty obvious just looking at the map of Porto where the top neighborhoods are going to be and what the most likely collections are going to be. If you zoom in on this bit towards the south centre of Porto, there's 4 neighbourhoods that in the real life city of Porto, they've kind of all combined to make the old historical district. They're all kind of considered one. And I'd say that any one of these 4 districts is very likely to become a collection. Could be 2 of them, I think, is quite possible. So of the 4, I'd say this one in the south, São Nicolau, is probably the most likely. It's like the old historic centre. But these 3 surrounding it, Miragaia, Vitoria, and Sé. I apologise to all Portuguese speakers for my terrible pronunciation, but these 4 right here, this is the old city of Portugal. There's so many landmarks in there. Beautiful churches, cathedrals, towers, palaces, museums. It's all down here. And these 4 together actually form a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is real historic stuff down here. The architecture is brilliant. If you happen to be floating over here, you can't do wrong as far as I'm concerned. I think the speculation down here will be very high, especially in São Nicolau, which is on the coast. It's the smallest of the 4, and it is kind of the oldest, I think. But yeah, the historic district of these 4 neighborhoods is what I'm going to be targeting in terms of neighborhoods. And then in terms of streets, there's only going to be a maximum of 10 collections in Porto, so I'm not going to recommend too many streets. To be fair, there are so many historic streets in Porto that it really could be a great number of them, but I'm going to pick out some of the most famous streets in Porto to kind of give you a sense of where you could be looking. So if I zoom in towards the southwest corner of Santo Ildefonso, and you'll see that it says Porto City Hall. If you continue zooming in here, I'd say this is probably the most famous street in Porto. If you happen to be floating over this, absolutely grab it. It's called the Avenida dos Aliados, and this is kind of considered to be Porto's city centre. So you've got the town hall here. All of these hotels and buildings on either side are going to be absolutely very valuable. Now, don't be caught out, because the Avenida dos Aliados is actually the bit to the south of the city hall, and it goes down just along here. It's actually very short. It immediately turns into the Praça de Liberdade, and then on the north side of the city hall, again, it changes its name. As far as I can tell, it's the Aliados bit of the street just to the south of the city hall that is like the really famous bit. So if that does make it as a collection, it'll probably be an ultra rare. But I think all of these streets, like immediately surrounding the city hall, could be worth a speculation. But that Dos Aliados is definitely the pick of the bunch. For the next street, if you zoom in on the border between Santo Ildefonso and Bonfim, towards the north, then you're going to find a street called Rua de Santa Catarina, and this is known as Porto's probably most premier shopping district. It's got loads of fantastic markets, cafes, restaurants. It's got a long history of it. It's a very well-known street in Porto, and it's actually a decent length, so you've got a decent shot at actually grabbing something. You can see here these restaurants towards the south of the street. The Rua de Santa Catarina, it's got a good shot at being a collection, in my opinion. Now, if we zoom in towards the northwest corner of Sé, we're going to find a bit of an unusual one, because it doesn't seem to be very well marked out on the Upland map, but all of the research that I've done suggests that this is quite an important street in Porto. It's right on this border here between Sé and Vitoria, and it's called the Rua das Flores, or the Street of Flowers. It's historically been a place where lots of noblemen and merchants like to set up shop. It's got a lot of history. If you look up online, there's a lot about it. So I'm not sure, because there's quite a big area here where the Rua das Flores should be. I just can't see. It says Flores Village over here, which is where it should be. So if there are properties like inside this Flores Village here, that could be quite a valuable area. As I said, it's a little bit of a weird one because I can't see the street, even though in Google Maps it's definitely there. So I just wanted to call that one out as a bit of a weird one, but definitely an iconic historic part of Porto that could be worth speculating in. We're going a little bit further north in Porto now, and we're zooming in towards the centre of the Cedo Theatre neighbourhood. Apologies again for my pronunciations. And if you zoom in here, you're going to find a street called Rua de Setofita. It's kind of the main street going through this neighbourhood. Now, Porto has always been founded and known as a city of commerce, and Rua de Setofita is probably the most iconic commerce street in the city. So I don't think you can go really wrong there. There's lots of retail and commercial stores even to this day. The architecture is really impressive. It seems like the kind of place that Upland would like to celebrate in the Porto release. So if you're looking to speculate on collections in terms of commerce, I think Rua de Setofita is a great option. One thing which I always love to point out in these city collection predictions is where are the very expensive houses in a city? Because Upland quite like to do a street which is, you know, the mansions or whatever. So where are those in Porto? Well, I did a bit of research, and there's one street in Porto which is within the top 10 most expensive streets in all of Portugal. And if you zoom in towards the northwest of the neighbourhood Lodelo de Ouro, this is the Avenida do Marechal Gomes da Costa. Apologies for the pronunciation. And this is the most exclusive street in all of Porto. If you drop there on Google Street View, you'll see that this whole thing is full of high-end shops, mansions, gated houses. The whole thing is absolutely pristine. It's a beautiful, beautiful street. And yeah, if you want to maybe set up a metaverse house in Porto and you want it to, you know, make a statement and to be a lovely place to live, the Avenida do Marechal Gomes da Costa is absolutely a fantastic place to do that. In general, this entire kind of northwestern bit of this neighborhood is very high-end housing. That street in particular is kind of the creme de la creme. But yeah, I can see some people maybe setting up a mansion sort of mini node around there and kind of building it up to make it like the Porto real-life counterpart. That would be very exciting to see. As well as neighborhoods and streets, I wanted to call out that Porto is of course where port wine is named after. So I think it's actually a pretty safe bet that if you can get your hands on a port wine cellar, do your research for where those could be located around the city. I think that is a very possible ultra rare collection, because Uplands do like to have collections which celebrate the unique culture of a city, and you can't get much better than having a famous type of wine named after your city. So port wine is definitely one to look out for. And also, as I go towards the east of the city here in the Campanha district, we zoom in on the Dragon Stadium. Of course, the release of the soccer legits is a big part of why we're getting this city in the first place. They're already building the football stadium here. So if you can get a house right near the football stadium, it might not be a collection, but I think in terms of the markups, it could be way better than a collection, because people are going to want to build their soccer legit shop right next to the stadium so that people can send to the stadium and then go to your shop. If you can somehow get something like on one of these streets right next to the stadium, I could easily see those selling for 100,000 UPIX plus, probably more. So if you happen to be floating over the stadium, I'd prioritise minting around there if you can. But as I said earlier, if you're minting, you're winning. So that's about it for this episode. I want to give a quick shout out to my executive and director level channel members: Bad Frog, Matrigno, Monopoly Mike, Matsuda R, JDad303, Tashar Zing, and HH Toyboy. Thank you very much everybody for supporting the channel. Thank you very, very much for getting to the end of the video. Best of luck in Porto. I can't wait to hear how you did, and I'll see you in the next episode.